All right, I'd like to introduce Mike Szücs from Cebu Pacific. Mike is the new CEO. You just became CEO last month, so congratulations. Before that, you had the job of Chief Executive Advisor. What does a Chief Executive Advisor do?
A lot of the same things.
Okay.
As a CEO, but no, there's the law was recently changed in the Philippines that allows foreign ownership of airlines, 100% foreign ownership of airlines, but in addition, it formally allows foreign executives, foreign management to be there. Previous to the change in the law, I was there in an advisory capacity only.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I bet after the last interview, you're probably pretty glad you're not government-owned airline, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. You know, I've got a great set of shareholders yeah, very pleased with our shareholders and our board. Keep us on a level footing, but also stretch us. So yeah, very good. Very pleased with who we've got.
Of course, you also had COVID to deal with these last 3 years, as everyone has. How is business now? Is things pretty much back to normal?
Well, I think first thing to say, Southeast Asia probably had it as well. Not probably, absolutely had it harder than anyone. Philippines was very much a case in point. During COVID, we were flying domestic in the Philippines was like flying international. Each particular region had its own set of rules, so it was very, very difficult during COVID. But we're back now. I mean, we ended the year on a note of profitability. As we got into December, it was great to get back into the swing of it. Cebu Pacific's always been an airline that's generated good profits pre-COVID, so it was nice to get the runs on the board again, and we've carried that through into this year as well. So we see a nice, healthy, and profitable year this year as we look at the bookings come in.
Now, there was always some question when COVID hit. You know, we knew there was going to be a recovery, but the question was, will demand come back with the same patterns that it has? Would it be like COVID had never happened and things would go back to normal? From a demand side, region by region, country by country, has it pretty much come back as you expected, or is it completely different?
It's completely different by market. It's difficult to anticipate. Revenue forecasting at the moment is a bit of a black eye. I mean, it always is anyway, but no, different markets coming back differently, whether they're, forward booking to the same extent as they once were is also a question. But look, I was asked the question by Bloomberg a short while ago about China. China for us is not coming back as strongly as, say, some of the other international markets. Places like Japan is coming back, Korea coming back very strongly indeed. Domestic market, the demand has come back. It came back through last year. We really incentivized that. We threw a lot of capacity into the market because we couldn't really get into international. But it was on a much shorter booking curve than it was previously. What we're starting to see now on the domestic side of things is people extending their bookings a little bit further forward, which of course is where we'd like to be as an LCC. We want to see people booking 12 months out. That's very much part of what we do. We put extremely low fares out into the distance, and that's part of building our base load factor. So we're starting to see a return to that in some of our markets, but it's far from across the board. In some markets, as I say, China is taking a bit of time to come back.
What do you suppose it is about the China market?
Well, I think it's only just reopened. I think there's a lot of focus on the domestic travel. I mean, domestic travel in China is back. I mean, in terms of capacity, in terms of travel, it's already there. International is way off. I think there's certain markets, sounds like Thailand is doing pretty well, but other markets in and around Asia, they're obviously slower to come back. Now, the Chinese traveler themselves, we know, has got difficulty in, just simple things like getting passports done. They haven't had a chance to process passports for 3 years, so now there's a backlog in that. So there's some administrative aspects that will take some time to get sorted. China will undoubtedly come back. I just see it's going to be maybe 6 to 12 months before it's fully back.
Great. I wanted to ask you about your 330 Neos, because they have a really wonderful configuration. Maybe not if you're actually flying on them, but from a CASK perspective, they must be amazing.
Well, clearly
459 seats.
Well, I'll come to the CASK in a moment, but clearly you've not flown on one because your comment is misplaced in terms of what the product offers. The product is, I mean, it's designed the 459 seater 330. We didn't intend that to be primarily a long-haul aircraft. We scoped that with our colleagues at Airbus to be a short-haul aircraft. So its mission length is really, sort of 3.5, 4 hours. That's the ideal thing. It's really for Manila, Singapore, Manila, Narita, places like that. And there's a strong strategic argument for that, which I'll come back to in a minute. But the product itself, if you get in it, the seat pitch and everything is better than if you get on a 180-seat A320. So the customer experience is actually fantastic for an economy product in a short-haul configuration, in a short-haul mission distance. Of course, we use it on long haul as well in our markets where people are price sensitive, primarily overseas Filipino workers. Of course, what they want is absolutely the lowest fare. And we're able to offer that because we've got absolutely the lowest seat cost of anyone in the world with that aircraft. It's a world beater in terms of the unit cost. So we're actually delighted with the performance of it. It works well on long haul. It works well in the short-haul markets where we're now operating it. Our only issue at the moment is we can't get them in quick enough. So we're currently operating with 5 A330s. We'll be up at 9 by the end of the year. So yeah, very pleased with that as a product. And I'll come back to the strategic aspect to it because, Airbus are shaking their head on this. I'm quite happy that nobody else is doing this just yet because when you look at this part of the world, and it's not just this part of the world, but particularly in this part of the world, the major metropolises are slot constrained, whichever way you look at it, and it's not going to get better soon. Not everywhere is like Singapore where they can just go and reclaim a bit of land and put a new runway up and a few new terminals. So there is going to be slot constraints in the major metropolises. And the only way to get around that is to upgauge. Now, we've done an upgauge. We've gone from 320s to 321s where we can, and a lot of airlines have done that as well. But we've got a 330neo that is the equivalent of 2 A321neos. And from a slot perspective, they take this one same slot. So just in terms of giving you that capacity lift, it's extraordinary. And in terms of, as long as you put it on a route where you can fill the seats, and I'm talking about to major metropolises, so you will fill the seats, then not only have you got a very low unit cost, but you'll also get a good unit revenue as well. It's a fantastic aircraft. So look, I shouldn't be trying to sell it. I don't want any of our competition to get one, but I know there's a colleague of mine from Airbus sitting over there who's desperately trying to sell some more in this configuration. But it's great. It's a great short-haul aircraft. That's what it's for.
All right, so a few hours ago, I did a panel up on this stage. We had Tony Fernandez, we had the CCO of Virgin Australia. And I think that they might agree with you about the economics, but they probably both said 4 times, if you have an LCC, you can't have complexity. Doesn't that add complexity?
Look, undoubtedly the case. And look, we are the world's most complex LCC, I would suspect. I mean, well, we're certainly there. And but our track record has been, pre-COVID, our track record has been that we have consistently been one of the highest performing airlines in terms of profit margins for not just one-off years, but consistently for many years. So we've been able to manage that complexity. And the complexity is not by us choosing. It's not like we've got mad management who sit there and say, hi, I want to make this industry really complicated. We fundamentally want to keep it simple. But why do we have 3 different aircraft types? Well, first of all, we have turboprops. Why do we have turboprops? There's not many LCCs that do that. The reason we have turboprops is there are so many airfields in the Philippines, some very attractive places where people want to go, that the runways are short or the runways aren't strong enough that it can only be a turboprop. So that's why. We would love, if there was no restrictions on infrastructure and lots of slots, we would love to have A321neos all over the place. It's a great aircraft from a simplicity point of view. And if you go to the Wizzes of this world and all these people who rightly, preach this mantra, which makes a lot of sense, is because they don't have some of the issues that we have. But we have slot-constrained airports, therefore the upgauge to the 330 makes sense. So it's really a factor of our specific geography, and it's a factor of the infrastructure constraints in this part of the world that we're driven to these 3 fundamental different aircraft types. But hey, we've shown we can make it work. So yeah, it's complicated, but you've just got to manage it.
Talked about your friend here from Airbus. You and I think we spoke on the phone before this. You had some complaints about Airbus not getting you there.
Well, I think Airbus gets a few complaints from lots of people at the moment. And I think it's, look, all the OEMs are struggling. Let's be clear. In slightly different ways, slightly different circumstances, but they can talk about supply chain, and there's a whole array of excuses. I think Some of them, I mean, without doubt, have validity. But what we want them to do first and foremost is be absolutely honest about what the situation is, and then come up with this is what we're going to do, and then make sure they deliver to that. We also expect, if I'm absolutely honest, we also expect them to recognize who are the customers who've stood by them through the pandemic as well. I mean, it's fair to say that all of the OEMs had to work hand in hand with airlines through restructurings, many airlines through bankruptcies, some airlines that are still to decide what they're going to do in terms of their restructuring. And we as Cebu Pacific, we went through our own restructuring. We didn't do a bankruptcy. We did it just by off our own bat, going and raising new capital, restructuring our business to make ourselves even more efficient for the future. And we were able to do that and have sensible negotiations with all our OEMs, all our lessors, all our suppliers, and act in a very honest and sensible manner. So we stood by them, and we expect to get some acknowledgement for that as we go forward. And that's with all of our partners, because we believe we've been a standout customer for them during the tough times of the pandemic. And to be fair, across the board, generally we are seeing the benefits of that now. When we go to the market, if we're looking to top up our aircraft, which we're now doing, we've just topped up 5 aircraft additional to our original plan. They're coming in very short notice from the leasing community. We've got lessors very keen to do business with us. One of the fundamental reasons is we pay. And I think the same can be said of the OEMs. I think they are having a very tough time, but they are responding, and I think on the whole they are recognizing the importance of Cebu Pacific as a customer.
All right, so we talked about the 330 being a great unit cost airplane. As you know, I'm based in Los Angeles. We wouldn't think that I would think about Cebu so much living in the United States, but there was a time when you told us that you were coming to Honolulu. What happened?
Well, look, it's not, never say never.
Yeah.
Never say never. So Honolulu, when the 330, it was originally the 330 CEOs, which was 8 330 CEOs was the original order of wide bodies. It's now 16 A330 NEOs. Airbus would like us to purchase some more, of course, but 16 A330 NEOs. But the original CEOs were based primarily on long haul. It wasn't a short-haul proposition. It really was to go and tackle the key overseas Filipino worker markets, which is in the Middle East, and then some other sort of leisure destinations. A lot of time where there was Filipinos as well, Honolulu being one of them. And we never actually made the Honolulu business case stack up. We never actually launched it. It's not to say never, but before we even got on to sort of finalizing a business case for Honolulu, we also came to the conclusion that long-haul LCCs is not a slam dunk. If you're in the short-haul game, there is no question that the best economic model by far, not just by a little bit, but by far, is an LCC. Everything stacks up to support the LCC in a short-haul environment. In a long-haul environment, the economic levers just don't quite work that same way. So the LCC model in long-haul works in some markets, but it doesn't in others, and that's what we found. And it was through that, and this is back in sort of 2017 time, we realized we had to shift some of our 330 CEOs into the more short-haul environment and started flying them more to places like Singapore, Narita, et cetera. And look, sometimes you've got to be lucky, and it was that, and we were lucky at that time because we realized almost by sort of just good fortune that was a great aircraft for us to be operating in those short-haul markets. And that's really what led our campaign, which ultimately was the order back in Paris in 2019. But when we went for that wide-body replacement order for the 330 CEOs, our entire pitch was not about a long-haul aircraft. It wasn't about Honolulu. It was about, this is to fly to Singapore, this is to fly to Narita, this is to fly to Hong Kong, this is to fly to Bangkok. Oh, and by the way, it also does Davao and Cebu domestically as well. So it's really was about changing, our own mindset. And as I say, through a bit of good fortune as well, realizing it's a short haul mega bus rather than also being something that can serve some key long-haul markets as well. Now, maybe Honolulu at some point in the future, but it's not top of our agenda.
All right. So often, these airlines start as LCCs, and then some executive says, well, the revenue might be really good here. What if we put in a premium seat here? What if we did this?
Yeah.
And they become looking like, WestJet in Canada.
Yeah. Well, there you are. You've described the path to destruction or whatever.
Yeah. So how do you keep the culture at the airline from not letting that happen?
You've just got to keep it. You've just got to regularly remind yourself of it, and yeah, that's. Keep churning out the things. You do look for where you can, clearly you want to gain revenue improvements where you can. We're big investors on the digital side. We think we need to be world class in the digital space, so it's not about underinvestment, it's about really investing and being brilliant at that. Because ultimately digital ties in very, very well with low cost, because it also links to self-service, it also aids you in terms of conversion, aids you in terms of people buying more in general. So we will invest heavily in that. So we want to have we don't have it yet. We have an improved app, but we want to have a world-class app. We will invest heavily in it. But we're never going to invest in giving you an extra chocolate on your, in the aircraft, or, a free this or a free that. You can have some of those things, but you've got to pay for them. But from the hard product point of view, something like the seats, that's really where you've got to keep it nice and simple. And one of the things that happened through the pandemic, and we were all put on the spot, me as then the chief executive advisor, but we had new investors coming in the form of Indigo partners. Now these are ultra low cost carrier junkies. I mean, these guys only know the one model. And they was there sort of rigorously saying, you will stay with this, Mike, you will stay with this. And of course, we will stay with this now. They're now on board with us. We are, without doubt, the most complex LCC that they have, but they understand why. But absolutely on the sort of things that you're suggesting, no, it wouldn't be worth my while, or it certainly wouldn't be in my interest to even raise those as a board discussion item. It wouldn't be good for my health, if you see what I mean.
I understand.
Nor would I want to.
Bill Franke, the chairman of Indigo,
yeah.
the most intimidating person I have ever interviewed in my entire life.
Oh, he's all right.
He knows exactly what
he knows exactly what makes money in this business. And I think keeping to what works, don't overcomplicating it, which is why your question about the fact we are complicated is a very, very valid one. But as I said, it's we've gone there purely by the fact of our geography and the infrastructure that we face. But otherwise, we really do want to keep it as simple as possible.
Thank you.